June 5th, 1849, Christiansborg Palace, Copenhagen. Frederick VII takes the pen and signs his name at the bottom of a document that has taken 7 months to draft and 189 years to become necessary. The document is the Grundloven, the Constitution of the Kingdom of Denmark. The pen stroke abolishes the Lex Regia, the only written constitution of absolute monarchy ever produced in Europe, signed by Frederick III on his own birthday, November 14th, 1665. Its 40 articles declaring the king the most perfect and supreme person on the earth, standing above all human laws, answering to no judge in spiritual or temporal matters except God alone. The Lex Regia was kept secret after its signing. It was not read aloud publicly until Christian V's anointing in 1670. And it was not published until 1709. For 189 years it granted the Danish king power that even Louis XIV never formally claimed in writing. Frederick VII has just ended it in an afternoon. He does not know it yet, but he has just saved his family. The dynasty he has preserved stretches back over 900 years by the time he signs, and it will stretch forward for at least another 175. It is the oldest continuous monarchy in Europe. Its founding king, Gorm the Old, died in the winter of 958 in Jelling, a small settlement in central Jutland, and was buried in a wooden chamber beneath a massive earthen mound. Dendrochronological analysis of wood from the burial chamber dates the trees felled to 958. His skeleton, discovered beneath Jelling Church, indicates a man between 35 and 50 years of age, approximately 1 meter in height, with osteoarthritis and poor teeth. He was not called the Old because of his age. The epithet refers to his status as the ancestor of all Danish kings who followed. Gorm's son Harold, called Bluetooth, erected a 3-sided granite runestone beside the burial mound around 965, its inscription claiming he had won for himself all of Denmark and Norway and made the Danes Christian. That stone is still there. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site designated in 1994. The figure of Christ carved into its face, one of the earliest depictions of Christ in Scandinavia, appears inside the front cover of every Danish passport issued today. Between Gorm and Frederick VII stand approximately 50 monarchs. In between Gorm and the present day stands approximately 60. The territories they ruled at the dynasty's peak included Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Iceland, Greenland, the Faroe Islands, Schleswig-Holstein, and, under Canute the Great in the 11th century, all of England. Canute's North Sea Empire was the largest dominion in northern Europe. The crown that Frederick VII has just constitutionally reformed once controlled the entrance to the Baltic Sea, the cod fisheries of the North Atlantic, the largest island on Earth, and the trade routes that connected Scandinavia to the continent. Every European dynasty that fails to make the concession Frederick VII has just made will, within the next 70 years, be destroyed. The Romanovs refused. On March 15th, 1917, Nicholas II abdicated, and 16 months later he and his entire family were executed in a basement in Yekaterinburg. The Hohenzollerns refused. On November 9th, 1918, Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicated and fled to the Netherlands. He died in exile in 1941, and the German monarchy was never restored. The Habsburgs refused. On November 11th, 1918, Emperor Karl I renounced participation in state affairs. The Austrian Parliament formally abolished the monarchy 2 days later. The Habsburg Law of April 3, 1919, expelled the imperial family and confiscated their property. The Ottomans refused. On November 1, 1922, the Grand National Assembly abolished the Sultanate. The last caliph was expelled on March 3, 1924, given 24 hours and a single one-way passport, and the Italian monarchy submitted to a referendum on June 2, 1946. 54.3% voted for a republic. King Umberto II left the country 13 days later. The Greek monarchy was abolished on June 1st, 1973, confirmed by referendum on December 8th, 1974, 69.2% for the Republic. At the start of the 20th century, 22 European states were monarchies. Today, 12 survive. Denmark's is the oldest of them all. The question is not what happened to the Danish crown after it fell. The Danish crown did not fall. The question is how a small Scandinavian kingdom outlasted every empire that surrounded it. The answer begins with a runestone in a churchyard. And Gorm the Old is the first historically documented king of Denmark. The first attested by contemporary physical evidence rather than later saga tradition. His reign began approximately 936. He ruled from Jelling in Jutland and was likely not king of a fully unified Denmark. His authority probably extended primarily over the Jutland Peninsula. He was married to Thyra, called Danmarkar Bot, Denmark's adornment, a title so unusual for a Viking-era queen consort that it appears on at least 4 runestones, more than any other individual in 10th century Denmark. The smaller Jelling stone, erected by Gorm around 950, reads, "King Gorm made this monument in memory of Thyra, his wife, Denmark's adornment." The word Tanmarkar on that stone is one of the earliest written records of the name Denmark. And Harald Bluetooth succeeded his father and became the architect of Danish national identity. Born around 910, he reigned from approximately 958 to 985. His conversion to Christianity around 965 was strategic rather than spiritual. The Frisian monk Poppo reportedly performed a miracle involving heated iron, but the political calculation was clear. Christianization prevented forced conversion by the Holy Roman Empire and strengthened centralized royal power. Denmark became the first Scandinavian country to officially convert, preceding Norway and Sweden by decades. Harald built the Trelleborg ring fortresses as proof of his military administration. Massive circular encampments, geometrically precise, housing hundreds of warriors, were evidence of a centralized state capable of marshalling labor and troops across a wide territory. His reign ended when his own son, Sweyn Forkbeard, revolted around 986, and Harald died in exile shortly afterward, the first but not the last Danish king to be overthrown by his own heir. Sweyn Forkbeard conquered England in 1013. His son, Knut the Great, built the North Sea Empire, Denmark, England, Norway and parts of Sweden under a single crown. But the direct male line of Gorm ended in 1042 when Harthacnut collapsed at a wedding feast and died. The House of Estridsson took power in 1047 through Sweyn II, whose mother was Sweyn Forkbeard's daughter. This new dynasty ruled for more than 350 years, but its internal violence was extraordinary. Sweyn II had at least 14 sons by various women. 5 of them became kings. Canute IV was assassinated on July 10th, 1086, killed before the altar of St. Alban's Church in Odense by rebels who opposed his taxation and planned invasion of England. He was later canonized as Denmark's patron saint. The blood feast of Roskilde in 1157 saw rival claimant Sweyn III massacre. His competitors at a banquet, Valdemar I survived and defeated Sweyn at the Battle of Gratha Heath on October 23, 1157. Eric V Clipping was stabbed to death in his sleep on November 22, 1286, by men disguised as Franciscan friars in a barn in Finderup. The identity of his true murderers remains one of Denmark's greatest unsolved mysteries. And the dynasty's supreme political achievement was Margaret I. Born in 1353, she united Denmark, Norway and Sweden into the Kalmar Union, formally established June 17, 1397. Her forces had defeated Sweden's King Albert of Mecklenburg at the Battle of Falköping on February 24, 1389. For 126 years, the three Scandinavian kingdoms shared a single crown. It ended in blood. Christian II perpetrated the Stockholm bloodbath on November 7th through 9th, 1520. Approximately 82 people executed in Stockholm's main square, including 2 bishops and numerous Swedish nobles, despite written promises of amnesty. Among the dead was the father of Gustav Vasa. Gustav led Sweden's War of Liberation and was elected King of Sweden on June 6th. 1523, now Sweden's national day, the Kalmar Union was permanently dissolved. Denmark would never rule Sweden again. From that point forward, the story of the Danish crown is a story of contraction. But before the empire shrank, it produced one king whose ambitions and disasters would define the nation's self-image for centuries. Christian IV was born April 12, 1577, crowned August 29, 1596, and would reign for 59 years, the longest reign in Scandinavian history until Margrethe II surpassed it. He transformed Copenhagen from a medieval town into a Renaissance capital. Rosenborg Castle, the Round Tower, the Old Stock Exchange with its dragon-tail spire, Frederiksborg Palace, the district of Christianshavn, all bear his mark. He expanded the Royal Navy from 22 to 60 ships and founded cities including Christiania, now Oslo. His monogram C4 is carved into buildings across Copenhagen. But his military ambitions destroyed what his construction built. Defeated at the Battle of Lutter and Barenberg on August 27, 1626, during the 30 Years' War, he was forced to accept the humiliating Treaty of Lübeck. At the Battle of Kolberger Heide on July 1, 1644, he personally commanded the flagship Trefoldigheden and lost his right eye to shrapnel, reportedly urging his crew to continue fighting as blood streamed down his face. His blood-stained clothing remains on display at Rosenborg Castle. He had 24 children with 5 different women. He died on February 28, 1648, at Rosenborg, age 70, bitter and broken. The nation he left behind was exhausted, indebted, and 10 years away from losing a third of its territory. The catastrophe of 1658 remains the single worst military disaster in Danish history. During the winter of 1657 to 58, Swedish King Charles X Gustaf marched approximately 12,000 soldiers across the frozen surface of the Little Belt on January 30th and the Great Belt on February 5th and 6th. An act so audacious that contemporaries struggled to believe it. The Swedish army arrived at the gates of Copenhagen. The Treaty of Roskilde, signed February 26, 1658, forced Denmark to cede approximately 1/3 of its total territory, Scania, Blekinge, Halland permanently, plus Bornholm, Bohuslän and Trøndelag, and the subsequent Treaty of Copenhagen on May 27, 1660, returned Bornholm and Trøndelag, Bornholm through its own rebellion, its inhabitants having shot the Swedish commander dead on December 8, 1658. But Sweden retained permanent control of the southern provinces. The borders established in 1658 and 1660 remain the borders between Denmark and Sweden today. The Treaty of Kiel on January 14, 1814, ended the 434-year Denmark-Norway Union. Denmark, having backed Napoleon, was forced to surrender Norway to Sweden. Norway adopted its own constitution on May 17, 1814, and entered a personal union with Sweden that lasted until 1905. Denmark retained Iceland, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands, Britain having objected to Swedish control of the North Atlantic. Then came 1864. The Second Schleswig War was Denmark's greatest modern catastrophe. After the Battle of Diebel on April 18th, Prussian forces storming the main Danish fortifications after a 6-week siege, and the Battle of Als on June 29th, all of Jutland was occupied. The Treaty of Vienna, signed October 30th, 1864, stripped Denmark of Schleswig, Holstein and Saxe-Lauenburg, approximately 40% of its remaining land area and 1 million people. Frederick VII had died childless on November 15th, 1863, just months before the war. His successor, Christian IX, the first king of the House of Glucksburg, then a cadet branch of the Oldenburgs designated heir by the London Protocol of May 8, 1852, was proclaimed from the balcony of Christiansborg on November 16th and inherited a crisis he could not prevent. Christian IX would later earn the title Father-in-law of Europe. His daughter Alexandra married the future Edward VII of the United Kingdom. His son William became King George I of Greece. His daughter Dagmar married Tsar Alexander III of Russia. Today, 6 of the 10 hereditary European monarchs descend from Christian IX. A partial redemption arrived 56 years later through the Schleswig plebiscites of 1920. Zone 1 voted 75,431 to rejoin Denmark on February 10th, and Northern Schleswig was officially transferred on June 15th, 1920. So Iceland left while Denmark was under Nazi occupation. A national referendum held May 20th through 23rd, 1944 produced 99.5% in favour of ending the Union, with 98% turnout. The Republic of Iceland was declared on June 17th, 1944, at Thingvellir. King Christian X sent his congratulations. Many Danes considered the timing a betrayal. The nation that once controlled a North Sea empire spanning 4 kingdoms is now 43,000 square kilometres. Its population is 6 million. Every one of those losses, Sweden, Scania, Norway, Schleswig, Iceland, was a moment when the dynasty could have fallen, when the institution could have been blamed, when a republic could have been declared. None was. And I'm curious, of all the territories Denmark lost over those centuries, from Sweden to Norway to Schleswig to Iceland, which loss do you think changed the country the most? Tell me in the comments. The reason the Danish crown survived is not military strength. It is not luck. It is a constitutional adaptation, 3 specific legal transformations spread across 3 centuries, each one a deliberate surrender of royal power that preserved the institution by changing what the institution meant. The first transformation came from catastrophe. After the Treaty of Roskilde cost Denmark 1/3 of its territory, Frederick III rode the wave of national humiliation into a constitutional revolution of his own design. In September 1660, the estates of the realm convened in Copenhagen. The city was bankrupt. The treasury was empty. The nobility which controlled the estates was blamed for the military disaster. Frederick's allies, Burgomaster Hans Nansen and Bishop Hans Svaner, organised the clergy and burghers against the aristocracy. On October 20th, 1660, Frederick placed Copenhagen under martial law. On October 27th, the nobles surrendered the Coronation Charter, the document that had bound Danish kings to aristocratic consent since the Middle Ages. Denmark became an absolute hereditary monarchy overnight. Frederick III had reportedly declared during the siege of Copenhagen that he would die in his nest. He survived the siege and then used the gratitude it produced to claim total power. He commissioned the Lex Regia, completed and signed on November 14th, 1665. 40 articles. The king supreme beneath God alone. The most total concentration of legal power any European monarch ever held in a single written instrument. It would govern Denmark for 189 years. The second transformation was the one Frederick VII performed on June 5th, 1849. When the 1848 revolutions swept Europe, a mass meeting in Copenhagen on March 20th demanded a liberal constitution. Frederick VII, thrice married, childless, more interested in archaeology than governance, living openly with a former ballet dancer named Louise Rasmussen, whom he had created Countess Dana, accepted the demands the following day. He appointed a liberal cabinet. The jurist D.G. Monrad drafted the constitution, drawing from the Norwegian constitution of 1814 and the Belgian constitution of 1831. Then a constituent assembly of approximately 152 members met at Christiansborg from October 23, 1848. The resulting document established separation of powers, a bicameral parliament called the Riksdag, civil liberties including freedom of religion and press, and suffrage for men over 30 who headed their own households, approximately 15% of the population. Frederick signed it on June 5th. His royal motto captured the transaction precisely. Folkets kærlighed, min styrke, the people's love, my strength. The monarchy survived because it surrendered power voluntarily. The Romanovs, the Hohenzollerns, the Habsburgs, each clung to absolutism until it was stripped from them by force. Frederick VII gave it away and kept his throne. So the third transformation solved a specific biological problem. Frederick IX, who succeeded his father Christian X in 1947, had 3 daughters and no sons. He was born March 11, 1899, had attended the Royal Danish Naval Academy rather than the army, breaking royal tradition, and rose to the rank of Rear Admiral. He was famous for the multiple tattoos he had acquired during naval service, unusual for a European monarch. He married Princess Ingrid of Sweden on May 24, 1935, and their 3 daughters, Margrethe, Benedicta and Anne-Marie, became the most consequential succession question in Danish history since the extinction of the Oldenburg male line in 1863. Under the existing succession law, the throne would pass to his brother, Prince Knud. And the 1953 constitution, put to referendum on May 28th, changed succession to male preference conatic primogeniture, allowing women to inherit when no male heirs existed. The result, 1,183,292 votes in favour, 78.8%. Frederick IX's eldest daughter, Princess Margrethe, became heir presumptive. Frederick IX died of cardiac arrest on January 14, 1972 at Copenhagen's Municipal Hospital. In a further referendum on June 7, 2009 introduced absolute primogeniture. The firstborn inherits regardless of sex, with 1,858,211 voting yes, 85.35%. Without the 1953 Act, Margrethe never becomes queen. And without Margrethe's 52-year reign, the institution never achieved the approval ratings that sustain it today. A single referendum in 1953 produced the most consequential Danish reign since Christian IV. The last time a Danish monarch attempted to exercise real political power was the Easter Crisis of March 28, 1920. Christian X dismissed the elected government over the Schleswig plebiscite question. Massive protests erupted across Copenhagen. Within days, the king was forced to back down, appoint a caretaker government, and accept that the monarch would never again act without parliamentary backing. No Danish sovereign has intervened in politics since. The constitutional lesson was absorbed permanently. The crown survives not by wielding power, but by visibly refusing to. Christian X embodied that lesson during Denmark's most dangerous years. He stood 1.99 meters, the tallest measured Danish king. When Germany invaded on April 9, 1940, Denmark surrendered within 6 hours. The government calculated that resistance would produce massive casualties without any realistic prospect of repelling the Wehrmacht. Every other occupied European monarchy fled. Haakon VII of Norway escaped to London. Wilhelmina of the Netherlands broadcast from exile. Leopold III of Belgium remained and was forced to abdicate after the war. Christian X stayed in Copenhagen. His daily horseback rides through the streets of the capital, unaccompanied by any guard, are extensively photographed and confirmed by multiple contemporary sources. That they became the defining image of Danish sovereignty under occupation. The king of a captive nation moving freely through his own city, visible to every citizen and every German soldier. The rides were not symbolic gestures designed for cameras. They were a daily practice, begun years before the war, that acquired their meaning from the context of occupation. The famous story that Christian wore a yellow Star of David in solidarity with Danish Jews is false. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum states unambiguously that the story is fictional. Jews in Denmark were never ordered to wear an identification mark, so the occasion for the gesture never arose. The myth originated in a 1940 Swedish newspaper cartoon and was later popularized by Leon Uris's novel Exodus in 1958. What is documented in the king's own diary is that he expressed willingness to wear the star if it were ever required. The distinction matters because the truth is more interesting than the legend. The Nazi occupation of Denmark operated through a unique model of cooperation that avoided the most visible forms of persecution until 1943, precisely because the Danish government and monarch remained in place and used their continued presence as a shield. The telegram crisis of September 1942 is confirmed. On Christian's 72nd birthday, Hitler sent a long and elaborate congratulatory message. Christian replied with 11 words, "Spreche meinen besten Dank aus. Cursus Rex, giving my best thanks, King Christian." Hitler was enraged, and he recalled his ambassador from Copenhagen and expelled the Danish ambassador from Berlin. The brief response was understood by everyone as a deliberate insult, and it accelerated the deterioration of the cooperative arrangement. When Germany imposed martial law on August 29, 1943, the protection that had shielded Danish Jews dissolved. German diplomat Georg Ferdinand Duckwitz leaked the planned deportation on September 28 to Social Democratic leader Hans Hedtoft. On September 29th, acting Chief Rabbi Marcus Melchior warned his congregation at morning services to go into hiding immediately. When SS teams carried out the roundup on the night of October 1st to 2nd, Rosh Hashanah, most Jewish homes were empty. Danish fishermen ferried refugees across the Öresund Strait to Sweden in fishing boats, typically 12 people at a time, crossings taking approximately 50 minutes. Of roughly 7,800 Jews in Denmark, approximately 7,200 were evacuated to Sweden. Approximately 470 were captured and deported to Theresienstadt, but continued Danish government intercession ensured almost all survived. The overall survival rate exceeded 99%, unique in occupied Europe. Christian's horseback rides ended after October 19th, 1942, when he fell from his horse and suffered injuries that left him largely incapacitated. He died on April 20th, 1947. A cloth armband of the Danish resistance was placed on his coffin. The woman who would define the modern Danish monarchy was born 1 week after the Nazis arrived. Margrethe Alexandrine Thorhildur Ingrid entered the world on April 16, 1940, at Frederick VIII's palace, Amalienborg. She was not born to be queen. Under the succession law in force at her birth, only men could inherit. The 1953 referendum changed her life's trajectory when she was 13 years old. She became arguably the best educated monarch in European history. Copenhagen University for philosophy, Cambridge for prehistoric archaeology, Aarhus University for political science, the Sorbonne, the London School of Economics, She was fluent in Danish, French, Swedish, English, and German. She succeeded her father on January 14, 1972, at the age of 31. Her artistic output was genuine and accomplished, not ceremonial. She painted under the pseudonym Inga Hild Grathma and exhibited internationally. In the early 1970s, she created a series of illustrations for The Lord of the Rings and sent them to J.R.R. Tolkien, who reportedly found the similarities to his own artistic style striking. 2 of her sketches were found in Tolkien's coat pocket after his death in 1973. She designed costumes and sets for the Royal Danish Theatre, created church textiles, and maintained a lifelong practice of embroidery and decoupage. She smoked strong, unfiltered Greek Karelia cigarettes for decades, reportedly quipping that she smoked wherever there was an ashtray. She was reported to have quit entirely in 2023, when she became queen, and approximately 42% of Danes supported the monarchy. By the time she left the throne, that figure had risen to approximately 82%. She didn't achieve this through political intervention or public spectacle. She achieved it through 52 years of visible, consistent, unsentimental presence, the same quality her grandfather Christian X had demonstrated on horseback through an occupied city. On December 31, 2023, at 6 o'clock in the evening, Margrethe delivered her annual New Year's Eve address from Christian IX's palace at Amalienborg. She had given this speech every year for 52 years. Every previous speech had been a reflection on the year past and the year ahead. This one was different. She told the Danish people she had decided to abdicate, and the announcement was an absolute surprise. She had repeatedly vowed never to step down. In 2012, she had said she would remain on the throne until she fell off. In 2022, after Elizabeth II's death, she had declared that the role was for life. That was the whole point. Even her sons, Frederick and Joachim, learned only 3 days before the broadcast. The Prime Minister was informed shortly before airtime. She cited her extensive back surgery in February 2023 as the catalyst. The operation, she said, had given cause to thoughts about the future and whether the time had come to pass responsibility to the next generation. She spoke directly to the nation for the last time as its sovereign, thanking the many people who had embraced her and her family across decades, calling the years a string of pearls. She ended with 5 words about her son and heir. They deserve it. Denmark deserves it. On January 14, 2024, the exact 52nd anniversary of her own accession and the exact 52nd anniversary of her father's death, the ceremony took place at Christiansborg Palace. It was the first voluntary Danish abdication in 878 years, since King Erik III entered a monastery in 1146. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Queen Margrethe, Crown Prince Frederick and Prince Christian gathered with the Council of State. Margrethe signed the declaration of abdication. She rose from her seat at the head of the council table and offered it to the new king. Then she spoke 3 unscripted words, "Gud bevar kongen," God save the king, and broke into tears. At 3 o'clock, King Frederick X stepped onto the balcony of Christiansborg Palace. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen proclaimed 3 times, "Her Majesty, Queen Margrethe II has abdicated. Long live His Majesty." King Frederick X. The traditional 9-fold hurrah followed. Approximately 174,000 people filled the palace square. They sang the national anthem without being asked. Frederick announced his royal motto, "Forbunden, forpligtet, for kongerige Danmark, united, committed for the Kingdom of Denmark." It was the first Danish royal motto since Frederick VII, not to mention God. He told the nation his hope was to become a unifying king of tomorrow. It was a task, he said. He had been waiting for all his life. Frederick X was born on May 26, 1968. Then he studied political science at Aarhus University and spent a year at Harvard under the pseudonym Frederick Henriksson. He is the rare royal who served in all three military branches: the Royal Life Guard, the Royal Danish Navy Frogman Corps, and Flight School. The Frogman Corps is Denmark's equivalent of the Navy SEALs. On August 18th, 2013, he completed the inaugural Ironman Copenhagen in 10 hours, 45 minutes and 32 seconds. His best marathon time is 3 hours, 22 minutes and 50 seconds. He led a 2,800-kilometre dog sledding expedition across northern Greenland in 2000. His wife was born Mary Elizabeth Donaldson on February 5, 1972 in Hobart, Tasmania. Her parents emigrated from Edinburgh to Australia in 1963, and her mother died of complications from heart surgery on November 20th, 1997. Mary holds degrees in commerce and law from the University of Tasmania and worked in advertising in Sydney. She met Frederick on September 16, 2000, at a pub called the Slip Inn during the Sydney Olympics. She did not know he was a prince. Half an hour after they were introduced, someone told her who he was. After a long-distance courtship, she moved to Europe in December 2001. The Danish Parliament passed a special law granting her citizenship upon marriage. They married on May 14, 2004 at Copenhagen Cathedral. She is the first Australian-born Queen Consort of any country. Their eldest son, Crown Prince Christian, was born October 15, 2005. He is the heir apparent. Princess Isabella was born April 21, 2007. The twins, Prince Vincent and Princess Josephine, were born January 8, 2011. Their middle names include the Greenlandic words Minnik and Ivalo, a gesture toward the unity of the Danish realm. The family is not without fracture. On September 28, 2022, Queen Margrethe announced that Prince Joachim's 4 children, Nikolai, Felix, Henrik, and Athena, would lose their princely titles effective January 1, 2023, retaining only Count and Countess of Montpezat. Joachim told the Danish press that his children were sad and did not understand. Princess Marie revealed that 10-year-old Athena was bullied at school, other children asking if it was true she was no longer a princess. But Margrethe acknowledged she had underestimated how deeply her younger son's family would be affected. She did not reverse the decision. Joachim now lives in Washington, D.C., serving as Defense Industrial Cooperation Attaché at the Danish Embassy. The monarchy Friedrich X inherited occupies Amalienborg Palace, 4 identical Rococo buildings arranged around an octagonal courtyard, designed by Nikolai Agdvedt in the 1750s, home to the royal family since the first Christiansborg Palace burned on February 26, 1794. The Royal Lifeguards march from Rosenborg Castle at 11:30 each morning, changing the guard at Amalienborg at noon. Christiansborg Palace, rebuilt 3 times after fires, is the only building in the world that houses all 3 branches of government: Parliament, Supreme Court, Mayor's and Prime Minister's office, alongside the royal reception rooms. Its Great Hall contains Bjørn Nørgaard's 17 tapestries depicting 1,000 years of Danish history, commissioned for Margrethe's 50th birthday. Rosenborg Castle, built by Christian IV between 1606 and 1624, houses the Danish crown jewels in its basement treasury, the only crown jewels in the world both on permanent museum display and actively used by the reigning family. Christian V's crown, made in 1670–71, weighs 2,080 grams and features sapphires of 144 and 81 carats. The Sword of State dates to 1551 and is Denmark's oldest piece of regalia. Denmark has not held a coronation since Christian VIII's anointing in 1840. Since the 1849 constitution, monarchs are simply proclaimed from the balcony of Christiansborg. The annual cost of the monarchy is approximately 89 million Danish kroner, roughly 25 kroner per citizen per year. Public approval stands at approximately 80%. When Margrethe took the throne in 1972, it was 42%. The institution she handed to her son is more popular than at any point in its modern history. The Danish realm today comprises 3 parts. Denmark proper, 43,000 square kilometres, 6 million people. The Faroe Islands, autonomous since the Home Rule Act of 1948, 1,400 square kilometres, 55,000 people. And Greenland, the largest island on Earth, and 2,166,000 square kilometres, 57,000 people, self-governing since the Act of June 21, 2009, which recognises the Greenlandic people's right to self-determination and provides a legal pathway to full independence. A 2025 poll found 84% of Greenlanders favour eventual sovereignty, though 61% opposed it if independence meant a lower standard of living. The realm may yet contract again. If you're enjoying this, subscribing is the best way to support the channel. It's free, and it helps us keep going. The Jelling Stones still stand in a churchyard in central Jutland. They are enclosed now in a climate-controlled glass case installed in 2011 to protect the runes from erosion. But they remain where Gorm and Harald placed them over 1,000 years ago. The smaller stone carries one of the earliest written mentions of the word Denmark. The larger stone carries the image of Christ that appears in every Danish passport. 1,066 years separate those stones from the man who now carries the passport. King Frederick X, the 54th monarch in an unbroken line from the Viking who carved the name of his country into granite. His grandmother was born under Nazi occupation. His mother illustrated Tolkien. His wife was serving drinks in a Sydney pub the night they met. His eldest son, the next king, carries a Greenlandic middle name for an Arctic territory that may one day choose to leave. The dynasty endures not because it resisted change, but because at every moment that mattered, it chose to change before the change destroyed it. The absolute king who seized total power in 1660. The eccentric king who gave it all away in 1849. The parliament that let a woman inherit in 1953. The queen who decided, after 52 years, that the most powerful thing she could do was leave. 174,000 people stood in a palace square in Copenhagen to watch her do it. They sang without being asked.